The Geras HaTshuva is hard, b'chlal, and it's of course especially hard because the Rebbe enlightened it so much. But by enlightening it, he adds many ideas that require you to think. But the Geras HaTshuva Yiraf on Yud Beis, the Rebbe has very little actually, and this is geschmacke, warm, like a Chassidish Fabrengen almost like the shiurim of Perek Yiraf and Perek Yud Beis. Yeah, Perek Yud Aleph. This is today's shir, Chof Ches Tamuz. What happens is like this. The Alter Rebbe talked about tshuva and explained that there's a tshuva tata and a tshuva la, a lower tshuva and a higher tshuva. The lower tshuva is focusing on the negative and trying to fix it. The higher tshuva is focusing on Hashem and trying to connect to Him. In other words, the lower tshuva is a negative experience of tshuva. The higher tshuva is a positive experience of tshuva, emotionally. And the Alter Rebbe says at the end of the Perek, the Alter Rebbe says the higher tshuva has to be done with simcha. The Alter Rebbe is now going to continue this discussion about the balance, about the two-sidedness, about the appearance of contradiction between the lower tshuva and the higher tshuva, between the idea that tshuva is done bitter and tshuva is done besimcha. And the nekudah that the Rebbe is going to offer us, this two nekudas, till the end of the Geras HaTshuva is two nekudas. The first nekudah is from the beginning of Perek Yud Aleph till the bottom of Kuf Amud Beis, 4 lines from the bottom, which is the summit. And then from 4 lines from the bottom till the end of the Geras HaTshuva is the second point. The 2 points are, the first point talks about the necessity for simcha in tshuva, and the second point talks about the fact that a person is never ever supposed to forget about the fact that he did an aveda, even if he did tshuva for it already. And the Alter Rebbe is going to argue that these two ideas of simcha and betachan in tshuva, and always remembering your aveda, seems contradictory, and he's going to resolve it. The bottom line is the next 4 shiurim, in other words, these 2 prakim, the 3 shiurim of Perek Yud Aleph and Perek Yud Beis, the message of these shiurim is that tshuva has to be a positive experience. What you should feel when you finish doing tshuva is happiness and joy and optimism. So the Alter Rebbe Perek Yud Aleph. However, though it's true that when a person feels submission in his heart, he begins tshuva tata kanal, the lesser madrega of tshuva. Like the Rebbe, but v'gama simcha v'havaya. There has to also be joy in Hashem, and you have to have shtei and yachid. You have to have both things together: the joy and the bitterness. But close, the bitterness is the lower tshuva, and the simcha is the higher tshuva. Mepratius, in the regular tshuva itself, there has to be simcha. How could that be? How can a person be bitter and happy at the same time? So the Alter Rebbe says, Kfar mil samura, it was already discussed. Belkuti Amarim Seif Perek Lamed in chapter, the first section of the Tanya, chapter 34 at the end. Mashikosa b'Zeir HaKadosh. The Zeir HaKadosh says that there was a Tanya who was a very, very holy man and a big tzaddik, and he was actually able to physically to do 2 things at one time. Chedva, gladness and joy. Tkiya is planted to be the boy in his heart. May sit the daf on one side, v'choli, and Bekiya sit the Tkiya, but the may sit the daf. His other eye was crying. He physically was laughing on one side of his face and crying on the other. In other words, he was besimcha from his connection to the Eibishter, and he was bitter about whatever measure of separation there is, which is what something which Alter Rebbe also discusses in Tanya Perek Lamed Aleph. Alter Rebbe argues each person, when he does tshuva, has to have the joy from the opportunity. On top of the joy of the opportunity to do tshuva, or the fact that tshuva has to be done with simcha, in addition to the bitterness, there's another issue. And this second issue is very, very compelling. It's very powerful. And that is ha'emunah va'betachan. Part of tshuva is believing and trusting the Eibishter. What are you believing and trusting the Eibishter? That you can win the lottery? Maybe. That you're going to have a great profession? Maybe. No. What is emunah betachan for sure? A person has to have his heart prepared in his trust in the Eibishter, that the Eibishter forgives him. The Eibishter desires goodness. Hashem is benevolent and compassionate, and he's very forgiving. That take it from yad immediately. That a person asks apology and forgiveness from the Eibishter. And it says in the Pasuk Kerev, notwithstanding how many, and wait, because of your great compassion, erase my sins. Kapseini, wash me, tareni, purify me. All my sins you should wipe away. This belief and trust that Hashem forgives exists in the mind and the heart of a Jew without any doubt or doubt of a doubt in the world. This was discussed by Emes in Chelik Aleph in Perek Chav Vav, chapter 26, and also earlier at the end of Chavav and at the beginning of Chavav. And what tells over there is that if you do tshuva and you can't have simcha after the tshuva, it becomes a shalom if you do tshuva in the first place. There has to be a stopping the meridas and then a simcha. Must be. As we say every day, in Shemini Esrei 3 times a day. That Take if shemavakshim slach lanu v'chulu. We begin the bracha by saying slach means please forgive me, right? And 3 lines later we bless the Eibishter Baruch Atah Hashem, blessed are you Hashem, Chanun, the benevolent one, Hamar B'Leslech, that forgives abundantly. So now Rebbe is medayik. It doesn't say Chanun Ubal Haslicha, the master of Slicha. It says Hamar B'Leslech, that the Eibishter forgives you. 2 lines before you ask him for forgiveness. 2 lines later you're thanking him for forgiving you. Rebbe, how could you say that? We know that an uncertainty about a bracha is to go to the lenient side. We're always afraid from making a bracha in vain. So how could you say, thank you Hashem for forgiving me? Maybe he didn't. Like the Alter Rebbe El Teret says, there's no suffix whatsoever. Since we asked him to forgive us, if not for the fact that we would sin again, because of our Yetzer Hara and because of our distractedness and so forth, Hayinu Negalam Yad will be redeemed immediately, as we say later on in the Berachos, Baruch Hashem Goyal Yisrael, that He's already redeeming Klal Yisrael. So the Eibishter Feshor forgives us. That Bemis Mashiach should come when He does tshuva. It doesn't come because we're going to sin again. But the tshuva for sure is true, and the Eibishter Feshor forgives us, even though we've done the sin many times, and there's a strong possibility that we'll do it again. Even in the character of people. A person must forgive, take it immediately and right away. Is asked for forgiveness. A person shouldn't be a cruel person, but he should forgive. A person chops off another person's hand, which is a terrible crime. The big Gemara says at the end of the 8th chapter that a person has to forgive a person even if he cut off his arm. If a person says, I'm sorry 3 times, he didn't forgive him. You have no more halachic obligation to ask him forgiveness because the sin goes over from the person asking the mechila, from the person who refuses to deliver it. And therefore the Matthias was that those people called Givainim, that are called in Chazal and Halacha Nisinim, they were outside of the Jewish camp. And they were Gerei Tzedek, but they were not allowed to marry to other Jews because of the following. David asked forgiveness from them. Ba'ad Shal Shemus Agavenim for Shal HaMelech killed 8 Givainim v'Lerotu Limchal. They didn't want to forgive Gazar David Aleim. David HaMelech decreed about them Shal Yavu B'Kal they can't marry other Jews because the nature of a Jew is Shem Rachman V'Gema. A Jew naturally has Rachmanis and so forth. To the Isa V'Perek Ches the Yivamis. The Gemara says in Yivamis. It means it's like HaKadosh Baruch Allah has come in. If by people a Yid's Teva is a Rachman, and because the Yid's Teva is a Rachman, he forgives. And he forgives not just once, but he forgives multiple times. Allah has come of a kama. When it comes to the Eibishter is even more forgiving and more understanding, and he forgives many, many times over. And therefore, part of tshuva is the simcha b'shas ma'aseh, and the betachon la'achar ha'ma'aseh that the Eibishter for sure forgive.